Hey, Nathan, thank you for speaking with me. And so just to clarify, you were involved in the final panel, the fourth one
Yes.
regarding solutions. Were you there both days?
I was not there. I went to class the first day.
Okay. And then you were not there for the storytelling event on Friday either?
No.
Okay, so you were there for day two. Okay.
Yeah, day two and the little introductory
Mhm.
dinner. Yeah.
Okay. So now that it's been about a little bit over a month and 5 days ish since the conference, what do you think of what you experienced on day two of the conference, both being in a panel and watching panel three happen?
I thought that I suppose the discussion was, it was well led. I felt like all of the topics were important and relevant. I do think it made it clear to me that I feel like there definitely should be some sort of follow-up discussing actual, action, further organization,
Right.
and so forth. But I felt like, in general, the ideas discussed and the topics discussed were relevant
Okay.
and important.
Going to the idea of the follow-up, what would your idea of this follow-up be? Would it be a follow-up led by this organization, or would it be something, an addendum to this almost, in that it is a follow-up but also led by students proposing more solutions like you guys were doing in the final panel?
I think something like the final panel would work absolutely fine if it were just more solution focused.
Okay.
Maybe, like this panel, reach out to students beforehand, figure out exactly what they have in mind, to sort of give some sort of direction to the discussion. But I feel like in general, the way this was led it went very well.
Okay.
Maybe just, they need to keep a focus on time management, since our time is so limited. Maybe, like with the fourth panel, limit audience discussion to a certain amount, or if you want to have audience participation, a lot more time.
Sure, yeah. Okay. And what do you remember best about that day now?
Well, certainly being on the panel was more memorable than actually watching it. I was surprised to hear, I guess, some of the things that both Russian and American students had in common, and certain things that I don't know. I feel like we agreed on most things, but there were still some viewpoints we didn't quite have in common. It would take me a while to get my thoughts together, but I would.
Essentially, what you're saying is getting to know the exact, well, not exact, but thought patterns of Russian students, and even of American students.
Yeah, getting to know honestly, just getting to know the thought patterns of other students, because I think, I've fallen into the same sort of hole of, typically spending my time talking with like-minded people, and so it was interesting to get I feel like an impression of what students think more generally, than just people in my sort of discussion circles.
And would you say this has had a lasting impact upon you, something that you, not only just when you look back upon it, you think that was a really good thing, but in your day-to-day life going forward, you feel that has had an effect on you? Or at least informed you going forward. It's not every day you're thinking,
exactly.
Maybe it does inform the way you approach things now.
It may not affect my day-to-day life much, but it certainly encouraged me to be more proactive when it comes to trying to persuade other people and also hold discussions. I think in the past, a lot of my political talks or discussions about these sorts of issues that we discuss at the conference tend to be a lot of people talking at each other, and it's really inspired me to try to learn to really debate and be persuasive. But also, when I get home, I would like to talk with our Russian club and encourage them to be more proactive in a diplomatic sense, as opposed to just sort of one-sided lecturing.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a big benefit. That's what they're really trying to accomplish in many ways, of just trying to get started dialogue, which is really hard to start because it's so tempting just to talk to people, especially, at least from my perspective, because I tend to get treated as the arbiter of Russian information because I'm the Russian guy. People, because not many people do. I tend to get in this boat. I don't want to start talking at people, which I think they're flip sides because I mean, there are two sides because on one hand I do know more than they do generally, but on the other hand, that doesn't make me arbiter of information.
No, yeah, I feel the exact same way, especially at home when I'm talking to any Americans. It's despite the fact that I'm American that's been studying Russian for just over 2 years, I'm immediately seen as like some sort of ambassador for Russia and Russians when like really, especially compared to an actual Russian person or a Russian student, I know very little.
Yeah.
Just because I know much more than the average American doesn't mean that in the grand scheme of things I really know much at all.
Yeah. That's a very positive thing. I think that's something that we can all do a little bit more of, and I hope that the conference impose that upon many people that we do need to listen more than we do. And even if the opinion is or the idea that's being expressed is not correct, it's still coming from a place of it's coming from something. It's not made out of whole cloth.
Yeah, everybody's for the vast majority of people have their opinions based in rationality and reason. Their reasoning may be flawed to a certain point, but everybody has a rational position. Everyone, reasons their way into their beliefs.
Right. That was something that really annoys me. I think that's a joke that's mostly died down, but when I was in high school and everything didn't make sense, a lot of people would just yell logic, like, oh, logic, there's no logic in your thinking, when the reality is, there's literally nothing that doesn't have a logic.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything has an internal logic. It's a matter of whether or not you can understand what that is, and sometimes you can't.
Yes.
We shouldn't always have to understand every logic, because some are a little bit tortured, or quite tortured, but we should work to do so anyway.
Yeah, and you can't work to persuade people and promote understanding without being understanding yourself. You don't have to radically change your views or even, I don't know. For everybody, it's more productive to be able to put yourself in the other person's shoes and see where they're coming from, even if your only goal is to persuade them and you are determined to not be persuaded yourself. It's still useful for absolutely everyone to understand the other person's position. Okay,
so if I'm understanding this correctly, it sounds like one of the things that you most took away and most affected you about this conference is your position in the ecosystem of dialogue, and that we are not. We're not the moderators of every discussion, but we are participants in every one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. In every discussion is in some sense. I don't know. Every discussion is going to maybe impact people's beliefs somewhat, and there's a great deal of responsibility that comes with that, and we need to be. All of us that participate in these discussions need to be reasonable. We need to know how to argue and debate, but one of the most important parts of that is understanding, and understanding the other person's position.
I think that's a great thing to take away. And thank you so much for speaking with me. Do you have any last things you'd like to communicate, or? It's okay.
Not off the top of my head. I think it'd be great if maybe just track 2 in general would. This meeting was great, but I think a really important part of the organization should just be sort of general outreach to students who maybe can't necessarily meet in person, but just promote people to hold their own discussions and that sort of thing at their own universities and their Russian clubs or political clubs or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.